As I was walking down the mountain, at that time the sun started coming out. You could see the shimmering waters, the lake and the sun. I had this profound sense of gratitude. That sense of gratitude is something we often forget because we are so busy. And here I am with some great friends on a very crisp, beautiful morning in a beautiful setting to be here to enjoy this day with some colleagues to talk about happiness.
The voice and greeting of Professor Viswanath from Harvard University. He was the one, a member of the scientific committee, who inaugurated the Lugano Happiness Forum, an event organized by IBSA Foundation for Scientific Research, the cultural division of the City of Lugano, and the Sheung Center for Health and Happiness of Harvard University. The forum aimed to bring together scholars, policymakers, and experts to explore the intricate mechanisms and underlying principles of human happiness and well-being.
The forum embarked on a rigorous journey into the realms of different scientific disciplines and interdisciplinary research and practices to unravel what shaped and defined the pursuit of happiness in culture, science, policy, and practice.
The event, organized in the Swiss city of Lugano at the LAC Cultural Center, lasted 2 days. In this video, we briefly revisit the journey in search of happiness and well-being.
The World Health Organization defines health and well-being as not merely an absence of disease, right, but complete state of well-being, physical, psychological, and social. And what I mean by that is, if you think about social well-being, we just heard it's integration into the society. It's association. It comes with our connections to either the society, other individuals, families, groups, institutions, etc., right? Again, we don't have to go through the entire bullet point series. The point is, we are happier when we are connected to other people. We define health in connection to what others are feeling.
I want you to find a photo that brings you joy, that literally makes you smile. So I want you to take just a second and scroll through and find one. Now, my guess is, for many of you, that this is someone you love, someone you care about, people in your life.
Julianne Holt-Lundstad is a professor of psychology and neuroscience and the director of the Social Connection and Health Lab at Brigham Young University, USA. Her talk was inspired by photographs, the ones we see every day on our mobile phones, the ones that make us feel good.
Survey after survey, when people are asked, what is the key to your happiness? It's not success or wealth. It's relationships. It's the relationships with family, friends, and those that you are close to. And so the pandemic certainly rose awareness of the importance of our social connections for our well-being. Nearly a quarter of the global population reports feeling very or fairly lonely. Very simply put, people who are more socially connected are happier, healthier, and live longer than those who don't. Humans are social beings, and we are not meant to be alone. And so this is part of our shared biology with other kinds of social species. And what we see is that across species, that being part of a group is essential for survival. I want you to imagine that there is a new medication that's been put on the market. And this new medication can increase your survival by 50%. It can reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by 29%, reduce your risk of stroke by 32%. It can also reduce your likelihood of developing depression, your likelihood of developing dementia. It can even enhance your immune response, making you less susceptible to colds and viruses and more and greater responses to vaccines. And better yet, it has few, if any, side effects and can actually increase your well-being. Now, of course, I'm not talking about a drug, but if I were, I'm talking about social connection, right? But if I were, every one of you would probably want to ask your doctor to prescribe this to you.
If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
John Helliwell is a distinguished fellow of the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research and Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of British Columbia. In his talk, he examined the World Happiness Report 2024, which highlights significant international differences in the relative happiness of the young and the elderly. In North America, the happiness rankings for those under 30 are much lower than for those over 60.
We got lots of reasons why people start happy and they get less happy as they get into middle age. If you believe the original story about the middle age crisis and crunch, you're carefree when you're very young. Unfortunately, because we don't know the real reason, happiness drops year by year through schooling. We're not teaching them to be happy in that thing. What are we teaching them, or how is the way in which we're teaching them, giving them an information set that makes them feel less good about life as a whole? And whatever that is, of course, I would argue that needs to be changed.
Regarding the World Happiness Report, Finland deserves a special mention. Explaining why was Dr. Heikki Hiilamo, a research professor at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare.
Finland has occupied the top position in the World Happiness Report for 7 years in a row. Perhaps the Finns are not so happy, but they are less miserable than people in other countries because we have a very comprehensive welfare state which takes care of those people whose lives could be miserable.
People dislike when I say this is the age of paper and billboards driving information for people is gone. Right now, people around the world, many communities, they pick up their phone and they digest information in a very real, ongoing context.
A cardiologist and public health expert, Garth Graham is the director and global head of healthcare and public health at Google and YouTube. In Lugano, he argued that technology platforms can facilitate the spread of information with faster and deeper engagement than traditional media sources.
Information is a really powerful component, especially nowadays, to really drive this issue of social connectedness, happiness, and then how we can improve health and mental health overall.
Mark Seton, PhD, is the CEO of pursuitofhappiness.org. He has taught at SUNY, UC Berkeley, and Oxford. Mark and his team design educational programs on the science of well-being for schools and corporations. He is especially interested in the resonance between modern science and ancient wisdom.
Around 45% of teenagers in America and also in the UK have depression and anxiety. It's an international emergency. Within well-being, what has been the biggest focus of interest in the last 5 years? And I went through 5 different areas of interest. Exercise has become a huge focus of interest. We're discovering new things about how exercise affects the brain. And actually, some areas of our brain grow. Practicing mindfulness was number 2. Sleep also is very important. And also self-efficacy, the sense of control that we have. And it's connected to autonomy, freedom. Personal freedom is very closely linked with happiness. And finally, food.
Understanding well-being represents a timeless quest in related sciences, and Professor Dr. Christian Montag is well aware of this. He is from the University of Ulm in Germany and works at the intersection of psychology, neuroscience, and computer science. Among other areas, he studies how individual differences in personality relate to well-being.
Think about your life in the last month. How much have you danced? How much have you laughed? How much have you felt sad and so forth, which would be, of course, the downside. And the argument was in the field of studying the well-being complex is that we only by combining a cognitive and an affective approach, we can truly grasp individual differences in the well-being complex. What we observe here is that people who tend to be more neurotic, that they also report lower life satisfaction, and people who are more extroverted report higher life satisfaction. This comes not as a surprise, to be honest, because a neurotic person is characterized by experiencing more negative emotions in everyday life. They tend to worry more. They tend to be more anxious about the future. We have different brain systems going along with different experience of positive effect. So if we trigger our brain systems, the seeking system, this goes along with energy, feelings, exploring the world. If we activate our lust system, well, you guess what's happening. It goes along with the feeling of being horny, as Jörg put it in his TED Talk. Then we have the care system as a positive pleasure system, which goes along with caring about your children, loving, tenderness, something which we observe. And then we have the play system, which is, when it's activated, goes along with pure joy. And therefore, effective neuroscience speaks for the fact that we, at best, we trigger these positive emotions to experience well-being in the absence of the activity of the negative primary emotional systems.
Bjorn Grinde, a Norwegian scientist and professor emeritus at the University of Oslo, uses a biological and evolutionary framework to explain happiness. Nervous systems guide animals toward behaviors that promote survival and reproduction. Around 300 million years ago, evolution introduced a system of feelings to motivate behavior beneficial to the genes.
I'm a happiness biologist. It means I try to understand what happiness is about in biological terms, why and how evolution gave humans this capacity, the capacity to feel either positive or negative feelings, and how understanding that feature of the human brain can help us to improve happiness.
I think personally, and that is also why we study happiness, people want this. At least I would like this. So I want to have a happily ever after.
The image of idealized happiness was presented at the forum by Professor Martien Borger, Academic Director of the Erasmus Happiness Economics Research Organization at Erasmus University Rotterdam, Netherlands, who then shared a key fact. Despite tremendous economic growth over the past decades, happiness has not significantly increased.
Why is this little guy so unhappy with his delicious ice cream? That is because there is a girl with like a much bigger ice cream sitting next to it. What people do is they mostly look upward when they socially compare, and also mostly in a negative way, and that creates feelings of envy and jealousy. And that brings us to the question, can economic growth make us happy? There's a difference of what we expect that makes us happy and what makes us happy. And if we look at expectations, then some things matter less than we think. And that includes things like money, youth, beauty. And we underestimate often the importance of things like social relationship, free time, but also volunteering, dancing, and humor on our happiness. What could we do? We could create cities where it are better places to meet. Remember, for those who are a little bit older, the times that you were still able to play on the street. Nowadays, we don't see children playing on the street anymore because it's considered too unsafe. But with people and parents on the street, you can revive the social capital in our neighborhoods.
The focus of the forum then shifted to Switzerland with Urs Beery, chairman of the executive board and co-owner of the research institute GFS.Bern, who has been studying opinion-forming processes on political and social issues. His talk highlighted the relationship between democracy and well-being.
In a democracy, the mood of the population is quite important. Switzerland has a political system that is based on strong federal structures and the party landscape without the ruling majority party. It is equally important that people fundamentally trust the political system and can therefore lose votes and elections without fundamentally questioning this system. Both of these are present in Switzerland, and this leads to a strong satisfaction with one's own life, but also with Swiss politics. Satisfaction with a society and the political system is not a matter of course. It is the result of a social discourse on the major problems of our times and on possible solutions.
At the forum, there was also a touching talk by Karen Guggenheim, an American CEO and founder of the World Happiness Summit, advocating the benefits of an evidence-based approach to increasing happiness in all areas of life. She is a pioneer in the global happiness movement and a motivational speaker, inspiring people to grow post-trauma and rebuild lives focused on meaning, purpose, and happiness.
11 years ago, my husband passed away. He caught a cold, which developed into pneumonia, and in 10 days he was gone. And needless to say, in that moment of shock and trauma, I didn't really want to live. Not because I had suicidal tendencies or that, but I didn't want to be alive to life. I wanted to retreat. I wanted to go inside. And anybody here who has dealt with depression or any loved one who has depression, you go inward, right? But I remembered I had children. And so we talked earlier about responsibility. So I hold the responsibility of being a mother as my number one aim in life. And so I thought, oh my goodness, what about my children? And I made a decision to live for commitment, for love. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to live happy.
Randy Terron is the founder and CEO of ProjectHappiness.org, a global nonprofit based in California that creates emotional resilience programs for people of all ages. With a social media community of 2.4 million, Randy's mission is to empower individuals with the resources to create greater happiness within themselves and in the world.
The mission of Project Happiness is to empower people with the resources to create greater happiness within themselves and the world. And the word create is very intentional because we believe that happiness is not just a state. It is a skill set that anyone can learn.
Everything revolves around our brains. If you learn that you can control your brain and you have choices, then you can help navigate your emotions.
We all have the power to create more happiness within ourselves and the world, and happiness grows when it's shared. So we are the seeds, to spread that.
I have tried to build up the perfect well-being experiment with the three components of well-being. The first is the social component with social bonding, familiarity, sense of belonging to a group. This is very important to prepare the effect of mirror neurons later on at the time of hedonic phase. The second, the eudaimonic component, we explain what is going to happen. That is understanding the meaning of the experience that they will live. And then the hedonic well-being with emotion, and at the end, the wow effect.
Art improves happiness. This was experienced by the 99 participants who climbed together to a frescoed sanctuary in a scientific experiment led by Italian surgeon and researcher Enzo Grossi. The percentage of cortisol, known as the stress hormone, decreased. Cultural participation appears to be a powerful tool for a new welfare system, which, through neuroaesthetic and psychosocial mechanisms, promotes well-being.
After the experience, the volunteers' cortisol level were found to have drastically dropped. There was a reduction, dramatic reduction by 60%. The perceived well-being increased by 30%. Suggesting that viewing the art and the architecture had a relaxing and soothing effect.
One doctor said to me, I had a man who used to come to the emergency room every Friday night. I looked at his record and I noticed that it was only on Friday nights. And there was nothing really wrong with him. And so finally I asked him, I said, why is it that you only come in on Friday nights? And the man said, right, because I'm alone. If I weren't here on Friday nights, I'd have to bear with the thought of being alone on the weekend.
Depression, addiction, and trauma, so common in our society. Instead of solely relying on pharmaceutical therapies, Julia Hotz, an American journalist and author of The Connection Cure, explores social prescribing, encouraging health workers to prescribe community and cultural activities, like photography classes, museums tours, and volunteering, just as they do with medications. Science shows that a more connected life helps treat modern ailments.
This is not an anomaly. In the UK, it's estimated that 1 in 5 doctor's appointments are made for purely social reasons. There's tremendous pressures on our healthcare services now. We know about the burnout of healthcare professionals. There's some evidence that directing people to the activities in their community instead of the doctors can help reduce those pressures. And of 14 social prescribing studies found that schemes which had a social prescribing project in place had an average 24% reduction in emergency room visits, had 28% average reductions in primary care visits. And for this reason as well, we've also found that social prescribing can save money.
Shake it, it's always good, shake it, right? Now, you take your right hand and you do like a V, like a peace and love sign, yeah? Then you take the left hand and you do like a kind of a L. And now you have to change. And change again. And change again. Yeah, you can do it, Give it a try. This kind of brain fitness exercises connects the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain. You create connections.
Connections are what Aurélie Latinsky brings, and with her, we return to Switzerland. She is a TEDx speaker as well as a certified Chief Happiness and Chief Wellbeing Officer. Her overall mission, to foster a human-centric approach to work, where the team's happiness is part of the team's culture.
Positive leadership is a skill. Positive leadership, it's a mindset, and it's definitely an attitude. We could even replace positive leadership with happiness here. Happiness is a skill, happiness is a mindset, and happiness is, my God, yes, an attitude, right? And you know, emotions are contagious. The positive emotions, but as well the negative emotions. So you have to choose the right side here, paying attention to what you project, right? Emotional intelligence matters. Great leaders are often distinguished by their high level of emotional intelligence, which positively influence team dynamics, motivation, and overall performance. With positive leadership, you will definitely make a real difference at work.
Here ends our journey, our multidisciplinary exploration of a complex topic that touches many areas of our society.
Through scientific research, ideas, and even the emotions shared at the Lugano Forum, we have understood, among other things, that happiness cannot be defined only as an individual goal, but as a collective force for the common well-being, for our lives, and for all humanity.